Добрий день.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Oleksandr, and it's my pleasure to see all of you here in Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform. It's been 10 years of the war, and today's day 684 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor. And now we will be talking about the condition of our power grid. We will be talking to Oleksandr Kharchenko, director at the Energy Industry Research Center. Good afternoon, Mr. Oleksandr. Good afternoon. Well, I think it's no secret to anybody that it's a hard period for our power grid. The enemy continues their incessant strikes. The temperature falls below zero. It's 14 below zero outside. So how did it influence the consumption of power by Ukrainians? Well, in brief, situation is difficult, but under control. On one hand, we can say it's safe to say that that homework that we were doing during the war months, it already gives its results, and the shellings that were targeting a lot of facilities of a power grid don't bring the results that the enemy expects. Both air defense and the physical protection and the physical developments made by Ukrainian and power technicians, along with the generation companies and energy transportation companies representatives, they provide for the absence of shutdown schedules. There are no emergency shutdowns for the time being. Sometimes part of consumers are disconnected from the power grid in Odessa and Dnipropetrovsk and some of the western regions due to the bad weather. The problem is the breakdown of the wires because of a lot of snow, because of icing. So the wires, the cables, they physically break, and time is needed to reestablish the connection. So those are the main reasons for shutdowns for some of the consumers. I think that shortly, within 12 to 14 hours, the situation will be back to normal. Everything will be back to operation. On the other hand, the fall of temperature complicates the situation from the point of view of generation. And since this morning the consumption was lower than the usual, we explained it to ourselves first of all with the air raid alert that had a lot of people stay at home, didn't go to work. Some of the establishments and institutions didn't start working in Lviv, for example, so the consumption was lower in the morning. So it's important to keep it at this lower level, below average at this temperature, because otherwise it will create deficit that we have nothing to cover with. And the most important urge is to save the electric power. We have about 14.5 million private consumers who are connected to the power grid, and if every consumer decreases their consumption for 1 kilowatt, so they don't switch on the iron or boiler or an electric kettle for just one single time, it will provide for necessary result, necessary for the power grid to go through this cold period without any deficit and shutdowns. And it's really very important right now, saving energy, both by consumers and businesses. However, we work very actively with the big businesses. I know that distribution companies and the Ministry of Energy and Ukrinform, they work quite intensely with the big businesses. Talking about small businesses, it's tens of thousands of companies, so it's about their own conscience. They should think what they can switch off, without what they can make it for one day until the evening, I mean from the point of view of electric power consumption. So this is the situation for today in brief. So do we understand it correctly that there is no deficit for the time being? Yes, there is no physical deficit for the time being right now, but if the consumption grows just as it was being resumed after the calm hours, it will appear in the evening. So this is why this urge to decrease consumption is real present now. Well, you've mentioned that we may have some problems with generation. So do we use import in this situation? And what's the situation with the import generally? Well, the import is going on in small amounts. Honestly, I would like it to come in bigger amounts. My tone is swelling of talking that the national regulator should finally deal with this problem. Unfortunately, there is some fright of some conscious actions or fright of activities, some type of activity by our regulator due to the limitation of price on the energy market, which results frequently in effect when, as we need to import, the price in the European market is a little bit over this limitation, and even if the company has a contract to import electric power, they cannot do it because they have pay some additional amount over that price of in the Ukrainian market. So the problem is being discussed for some time, but the regulator has not solved it so far. So what's gonna happen in case a deficit emerges? Ukrinform will go to our neighbors for emergency support, and the probability is that such support, such aid will be provided, but it's way more expensive than regular import. So it's the last resort energy that comes at highest price available at that day. So I would like the import issue to be solved on a systemic level so that the larger companies could import the electric power safely. And we have a lot of bigger manufacturing facilities that are interested in normal contracting of electric power without any limitations. We were talking that one of the biggest challenges is the shells, the strikes by the Russians. So analyzing the last 2 months, is it safe to say that our power grid remains a priority for them? Well, now the focus is a little bit different. Last year the strikes were targeting the power grid specifically, and now they target both facilities of power grid and industrial facilities at the same time. And the fact that we don't have news about any destroyed electric power facilities, we only have to thank the coordination of energy technicians and the air defense forces. It's quite intense. The quality of communication is very important there, because our air defense clearly understand where the facilities are and why is it important to cover them, and they do cover them quite efficiently. And another parameter is the physical protection that that plays a significant role, and we have a number of practical examples when thanks to the physical protection, including in Kiev, everything was fine with the power grid facilities. However, the projectile was downed at the very last moment, or it was incoming but somewhere close to the facility, and the physical protection worked quite well in that situation. And another third parameter is understanding by energy technicians in all levels how they should act during air raid alerts, how to disconnect some equipment, switch it off, reconfigure some technological layouts, and it works too. So again, that homework that was done by all of the energy technicians, it gives its results. Even given the freezing temperatures, everything continues working. God help us to maintain it in this way. We do everything possible to make sure that there are no significant influence on the power grid. Well, I would also like to ask you about our nuclear power plants. What is their condition? Did we manage to fulfill all the repair and maintenance works on time? Yeah, we have to give Energoatom their due. They finished all the repair and maintenance works before time. They are working on maximum load, and God help them to continue working like that. Well, the results demonstrate that the representatives of Energoatom are highly qualified. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, do we have any questions on the floor? Vladislav Obuch, Ukrinform. So what does impede the development of accumulation system that would help to balance our power grid? Is it only about money or something else? And talking about your words about import, do we have only regulatory obstacles or technical obstacles too? Because in the beginning of the war, there was a lot of talks that we should build more transportation facilities. So is it already done? So let me start with the second part. Currently, the regulatory obstacles are not so intense, and the capabilities that we have technically we have capabilities to import about 1.7 gigawatts. So we don't even use them at least at 30%. Definitely, we have to continue building the distributing facilities to expand our cooperation with the European power grid, but now due to regulatory obstacles, even the existing potential, technical potential is not used. We could do a lot more. And talking about the power accumulation systems, there is a number of components. And one of the elements is the supply of the system. It takes a lot of time. They're in deficit in the global market, and the suppliers are ready to supply this type of equipment with a term of 1.5 or 2 years. So apart from investment component, which is obviously important, and it's very difficult to bring investors during the war times who would invest in power accumulation systems. Another important element is that unfortunately this equipment is not available at short notice. It's not possible to buy it and to bring it to Ukraine within a month. It takes a year and a half or two to come to Ukraine and get installed. We have another question. Express channel, Yuri Azovchenko. You've mentioned that there are air defense teams and physical protection protecting our energy infrastructure facilities. So what's physical protection? The physical protection are things that are built in many distribution and generation stations. Those are like concrete walls made of concrete, sand, other materials. So those structures are built or are being built. They continue being built to provide protection against drones. Those are the big metal structures who protect the infrastructure facilities. Just physically, there is a number of types of physical protection, and they have only one purpose: to make sure that a missile or a drone that doesn't hit the target directly, so that they inflict minimum damage, so that the shrapnel or the shock wave does not inflict any harm. Well, they are not capable of protecting against direct strike of a Kinjal missile, but thanks God we don't have any such strikes documented. Their high precision weapons flies wherever it wants and not where it's targeted. So the physical protection works. Well, and finally, I would like to ask you about something that is of concern to all of us. Given such stable parameters, can we make it without scheduled power shutdowns? We have good chances to go through this period without shutdowns, but we cannot predict it 100%. You see, now there are emergency power shutdowns due to weather conditions because the water freezes on the cables physically, on the equipment, and it just physically breaks them. The cables cannot carry the load of that ice. So yes, the emergency shutdowns will continue, I can guarantee it. But talking about scheduled shutdowns, we have good chances to go through this period without them. But it again depends on every single flat, every single apartment, every household. To what extent are we capable of decreasing our level of consumption in our workplaces, at home? A lot depends on it, really. So once again, let's remind everybody, we have to decrease the consumption during morning and evening times. Well, you know, during the cold weather, it's like effective for the whole day. In the night, the frost grows, but the consumption falls drastically. However, unfortunately, now when the temperature is -10, -15, it's important for us for the whole day to continue thinking about how we can decrease our personal consumption. What can we keep? Which devices can we keep off? And again, 1 kilowatt scaled at 14 million households. It's a serious parameter. It's a serious figure. One energy technician told me, like, tell them to pour like 1 cup into their electric kettle, not the whole kettle. It decreases the consumption for half a kilowatt per hour, and it's true. And we cannot even imagine how it helps. It's a minor thing that make up the bigger picture. Well, thank you very much for finding time to join our broadcast. Joining us was Oleksandr Kharchenko, director at the Energy Industry Research Center. And at 13:30, we will be talking to Natalia Gumenuk, and we will talk about the situation in the south of our country. So stay tuned. Let's continue working for our victory, and glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.